Am I the a-hole for cutting my entire family off after they secretly used the money my grandmother left me to save my brother's failing business? I, 34F, honestly never thought I would become one of those people who stopped talking to their family. Whenever I used to hear stories about people going no contact with their parents or siblings, I always assumed there had to be some huge dramatic event behind it. Abuse, violence, something obvious. But now I understand that sometimes families break apart slowly, over years, through 1,000 smaller moments that slowly teach one person that their feelings matter less than everyone else's. And I think that's what happened to me. I grew up with my younger brother, Eric, 31M. From the outside, we looked like a normal middle-class family. My dad worked in sales, my mom worked part-time at a dental office, and we lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood where everyone pretended their family was perfect. But inside our house, there was always one unspoken rule. Eric's problems mattered more than mine. Always. As a kid, I didn't fully understand it yet. I just knew that Eric seemed to exist in a completely different reality than I did. If he forgot homework at school, my mom would rush to defend him because he was overwhelmed. If I forgot homework, I got a lecture about responsibility. If Eric yelled or slammed doors, everyone said he had big emotions. If I cried, I was being dramatic. When I was around 12, I remember getting the highest grade in my class on a science exam I had studied weeks for. I was so excited to tell my parents. That same night, Eric got caught cheating on a test. Guess which topic dominated dinner for the next 2 weeks? Not my achievement. His stress. That was my childhood in a nutshell. I became addicted to achievement because achievement felt like the only way to receive temporary attention. Straight A's. Honor roll. Sports. Debate club. Student council. I did everything. And even then, praise in our house always came with conditions. You did great, but don't become arrogant. We expect this from you. You're the responsible one. Meanwhile, Eric got celebrated for basic effort. If he passed a class with a C, my parents took him out to dinner because he was trying. By high school, the difference became impossible to ignore. I had a curfew. Eric didn't. I had chores every day. Eric forgot. I cooked dinner 3 nights a week by age 15 because my mom said I was more mature. Eric's main responsibility was taking the trash out, and even that somehow became my problem half the time. And still, somehow, he was treated like the child with more potential. I remember one specific night when I was 16. My dad had promised to come watch me compete in a regional debate championship. It was a huge deal for me because I had worked insanely hard for it. I kept checking the audience during the competition, looking for him. He never showed up. When I got home later that night, I found out why. Eric had gotten into an argument with one of his friends and was upset, so my dad stayed home to talk him through it. I won first place that night. Nobody even asked how it went until 2 days later. That moment stayed with me for years. Not because of the debate competition itself, but because it was the first time I clearly realized I could accomplish something incredible and still not matter as much as Eric having a bad mood. When I got accepted into a top university at 17, I thought maybe things would finally change. I still remember opening the acceptance email in the school library and crying because I was so happy. My guidance counselor hugged me. My teachers congratulated me. Even friends' parents were proud of me. At home, the reaction was muted. My parents congratulated me, but almost immediately the conversation turned practical. How much will this cost? You'll need scholarships. We can't help much financially. And honestly, I understood. At least I thought I did. So I took out loans, applied for grants, worked constantly. I moved into a tiny apartment with 2 roommates and spent most nights balancing coursework with shifts at a restaurant. There were nights I cried from exhaustion in the bathroom at work because I was surviving on caffeine and 4 hours of sleep. Meanwhile, Eric was still living at home with almost no responsibilities. Then, during my sophomore year of college, Eric announced he wanted to start a clothing brand instead of attending university. And suddenly my parents somehow found money. A lot of money. Not only did they invest nearly $25,000 into his business idea, but my dad helped him convert the garage into a workspace, and my mom spent months helping him package orders. I found this out accidentally during a phone call with my mom. I remember going completely silent on the phone, because at that exact moment I was deciding whether I could afford groceries that week without overdrafting my account. I asked her where the money came from. She said, "This is different. Eric just needs someone to believe in him." I genuinely think something inside me cracked a little after that conversation. The business failed within a year. Eric blamed everyone except himself. Manufacturing issues, bad timing, social media algorithms, fake friends, stress, competition. My parents comforted him endlessly. Nobody asked him to repay anything. Nobody told him he should have been more responsible. Nobody said, "Welcome to adulthood." Meanwhile, I graduated, got a job in corporate accounting, and started rebuilding my life from zero. The next decade of my life was basically work. Constant work. I climbed quickly in my career because I was terrified of instability. I became obsessed with saving money because deep down I never believed anyone would help me if I failed. I worked late constantly, missed holidays, skipped vacations, avoided relationships for years because I barely had time to sleep. But eventually it paid off. By 31, I had paid off my student loans, bought a condo, built investments, and finally felt stable. And weirdly enough, that's when my family suddenly became more interested in me. My mom started bragging about me to relatives. My dad began introducing me as our successful daughter in finance. It felt strange because for most of my life, my accomplishments had barely mattered inside our family. Meanwhile, Eric's life remained chaotic. The clothing business failed. Then came crypto investing. Then photography. Then flipping vintage furniture. Then a podcast. Then another business idea involving energy drinks. Every idea was supposedly going to change his life. Every failure somehow became someone else's fault. And every single time my parents rescued him financially. Then my grandmother got sick. She was honestly the only person in my family who ever made me feel genuinely valued without conditions. She noticed things nobody else acknowledged. Whenever I visited her, she'd quietly ask, "Are you taking care of yourself? You look exhausted. You don't always have to carry everyone." I didn't realize how badly I needed to hear those things until she said them. During the final year of her life, I spent almost every weekend helping her. Doctor appointments, groceries, hospital visits, paperwork, medication schedules. Eric rarely showed up. There was always an excuse. Too stressed, too busy, too tired. Didn't like hospitals. My grandmother noticed. She never criticized him openly, but I could see the disappointment in her face whenever she asked if he was coming, and I had to say no. About 6 months before she passed away, she asked me to visit her alone. I still remember sitting at her kitchen table while sunlight came through the window. She looked tired but very calm. She told me she was proud of me. Then she said something that completely caught me off guard. She said, "You've spent your whole life being the person everyone leans on. I worry nobody asks whether you're tired." I immediately started crying, because nobody in my family had ever said anything remotely like that to me before. Then she told me she planned to leave me a significant part of her savings. I told her she didn't need to. She smiled and said, "I know exactly what I'm doing." When she passed away months later, I felt like I lost the only person in my family who truly saw me. The funeral was devastating. Eric cried harder than anyone there. And honestly, part of me felt angry watching it because he barely made time for her while she was alive. A few weeks later, we met with a lawyer regarding the inheritance. That's when everything changed forever. My grandmother left me approximately $180,000. Eric received significantly less. The second the lawyer finished explaining the will, the atmosphere in the room shifted completely. Nobody said anything directly, but I could feel it immediately. The resentment, the discomfort, the judgment. Afterward, my mom quietly pulled me aside and said, "I hope this money doesn't create division in the family." At the time, I thought she meant emotionally. I didn't realize she meant financially. Over the next several months, things became increasingly strange. Eric suddenly started contacting me more often. At first, it seemed innocent. Could I look over a business proposal? Could I recommend an accountant? Could I loan him a little money temporarily? I said no more often than before, and I could feel him becoming resentful. Then one night, my dad called me sounding panicked. Apparently, Eric's newest business was collapsing, and he owed investors a large amount of money. My dad kept emphasizing how stressed everyone was. Then he finally asked, "Have you considered helping him with some of Grandma's money?" I immediately said no, not because I wanted him to suffer, but because I knew exactly how this pattern worked. Every bailout created another disaster later. My dad sounded disappointed. Then he said something that bothered me deeply. "You have enough already. Enough," as if stability automatically made my needs less important than Eric's chaos. After that conversation, things got tense fast. Family dinners became awkward. Relatives started making subtle comments about generosity. My mom repeatedly mentioned how family should help family. Then came the moment that destroyed everything. About 8 months later, I noticed unusual activity connected to an old joint savings account my parents helped me open years earlier. I had temporarily transferred funds there while reorganizing investments and completely forgot the account still technically allowed parental access from years ago. Nearly $40,000 was missing. At first, I genuinely thought I'd been hacked. Then I checked the transfer history. The money had been transferred directly into one of Eric's business accounts. I felt physically sick. I remember staring at my phone so long my screen dimmed. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial my mom's number. At first, she denied knowing anything. Then she admitted it. She said they authorized the transfer because Eric was desperate. I asked if she understood that what they did was theft, and I'll never forget her response. She said, "How can it be theft when we're family?" That sentence changed something in me permanently. Because suddenly my entire childhood made sense. The expectations, the guilt, the pressure to always sacrifice quietly. In their minds, my stability was never truly mine. It existed to protect Eric from consequences. I started screaming. Years of resentment just exploded out of me all at once. I brought up college, the business money, the favoritism, the emotional neglect, everything. My dad eventually got on the phone and accused me of overreacting. He actually said, "You're acting like we robbed a stranger." I couldn't even process the level of entitlement. They genuinely believed they had the right to take from me because I was doing better. I demanded the money back immediately. They admitted most of it was already gone. Eric had used it trying to save the business. And the business still failed anyway. I ended up hiring a lawyer, and that's when my family completely turned against me. Relatives called me greedy. My aunt accused me of destroying the family over money. One cousin told me, "Your grandmother would be ashamed," which honestly almost made me laugh because my grandmother was probably the only person who would have fully understood why I was devastated. Eric eventually texted me a long message claiming he never directly asked them to transfer the money. But in the same message, he also wrote, "You had more than enough already while I was drowning. Not one apology, not one acknowledgement of betrayal. Just more justification, always justification." I eventually recovered part of the money legally, but honestly, the money stopped mattering after a while. What hurt was realizing that the people I loved genuinely felt entitled to my sacrifices. That no matter how hard I worked, no matter how responsible I was, my role in the family would always be the stable one, the fixer, the backup plan. The person expected to absorb damage quietly while everyone else protected Eric from consequences. I stopped speaking to almost everyone after that. It's been nearly a year now. Some days I feel peaceful for the first time in my life. Other days I feel crushing guilt because despite everything, these are still people I spent decades loving. Recently, my mom sent me a message saying, "Families forgive each other. We need to move forward." But nowhere in the message did she actually apologize. Nowhere did she admit what they did was wrong. And I think that's the part I can't forgive. Some relatives think I overreacted by involving lawyers and cutting everyone off. Others privately admitted they always noticed the favoritism, but were too afraid to say anything. Honestly, I still don't know how to feel. Part of me wonders if I destroyed my family over money. But another part of me knows it was never really about the money. It was about finally realizing that the people I trusted most never truly saw me as a daughter or sister first. They saw me as a resource. And eventually, I just couldn't survive that role anymore. So am I the a-hole?